So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Alonso from GoSurrogacy.com, and today we're going to be looking at surrogacy for international intended parents. Today's presenter is Melissa Brisman, who joins us from her own agency, and we are going to let Melissa give us a little introduction to herself. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So again, my name is Melissa Brisman. I'm located in the United States in New Jersey, which is on the East Coast. I own a surrogacy agency. We have had approximately 2,000 births and been in business for over 18 years. I also own a law firm that specializes in reproductive law, as I am an attorney as well. I am also a parent. I have 3 children, all born from gestational surrogacy. They are 18, and 13 years old. And today we're going to be talking about special considerations for international intended parents who are interested in using a gestational carrier in the United States. So in this session, we're going to be covering the types of surrogacy, the different types, what kinds of individual or couples do it, the differing laws, the special considerations that international intended parents have, what the contractual issues are, and we are also going to go over common questions that people who begin this process need to be made aware
of. Excellent. Thanks for that, Melissa. And just quickly, can you tell us, you said you've helped over with 2,000 births. Did you say that? Did I hear that right?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's an amazing amount. And with that, I imagine you're talking about people in the States as well as abroad.
Yes, about 25% of our clientele is from abroad. We do have a representative of a lot of different countries. We have a high number of people right now from Asia, but we do have people from Europe. Specifically, most of them are from France, Germany, England. We sometimes have clients from Australia, not as many. Sometimes people from some of the smaller countries, Venezuela, Argentina. We have had on occasion people from Russia. So people come from all over the world.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting kind of work. All right, I'll let you take over.
So first, I just wanted to go over the different types of surrogacy that we have. Today, we're going to be talking about gestational surrogacy. And in the United States, this is the most common form. And basically what that means is the woman who is delivering the baby is not using her own egg. She is using the egg of a third party and the sperm of someone other than her husband to deliver a baby for a parent or parents. We call those intended parents. And in that case, she's not the legal or the biological mother. Traditional surrogacy is not really done in the United States, but that is where the woman delivering the baby is also the biological mother, meaning she's using her own egg. Some places do allow traditional surrogacy, but really in the United States, it's very rarely used. The number of surrogacies in the United States has been increasing steadily over time, especially because in the U.S., in the last couple of years, there has been a strong push for gay marriage, and the federal government has recently recognized all gay marriages in all the 50 states. So we do have an increasing same-sex male population using surrogacy as well. So today we will be mainly focusing on gestational surrogacy. So the trends in the law with gestational surrogacy are much different here in the United States than abroad. First of all, surrogacy is legal in almost every state in the United States. And in a lot of states, you also can compensate a surrogate, which is not allowed in many other countries. But also in the United States, in most states, a carrier can't keep the baby, and the intention of the parties entering into the contract governs, and biology is less important. So, for instance, in many states in the United States, you can have 2 men, 2 women, or a heterosexual couple on a birth certificate, even if one person in that in that couple did not deliver the baby. So parents entering into gestational carrier arrangements in the United States do not have to adopt their own baby. They become parents the moment that baby is born. So for international couples, this is good because they can leave the United States very quickly. So normally an international couple who comes to the United States and has proper legal advice can leave the United States providing that the baby is healthy, probably within 2 weeks. The couple would need to get the birth certificate, which generally takes about 2 to 3 days and up to a week, depending on if the baby was born on the weekend, and then about a week to get everything ready for the passport. All babies right now that are born in the United States on U.S. soil are U.S. citizens. So that is another advantage for people who come from abroad. They will be getting a baby that is a U.S. citizen. However, we do have to be cognizant of the fact that the United States, come January of this year, will have a new president. And Donald Trump has said that he would like to change the law that allows any baby born on U.S. soil to be a U.S. citizen automatically. So although that, if you started an arrangement right now, likely that would be the same law when the baby was born. It may not be in a year or two. So that is something that we're going to need to keep abreast of as the law changes. So there are different types of people who enter into carrier arrangements. Of course, in the United States, something there is to know is that you do not have to have a reason for wanting to use a carrier. So if you were a female single woman and wanted to use a carrier because you didn't want to carry the baby, that would be legal, although that is highly unusual. That would be perfectly legal that you could use a carrier if you wanted. But most people have a reason. So women who have an absent uterus, or there is something wrong with their uterus and are unable to carry to term, will frequently use a carrier. Somebody who a child, carrying the child would have a health risk for them. So maybe they have a heart defect, or maybe they're a diabetic and something could happen to them from carrying the baby. They would be recommending to use a gestational surrogate. Women who have frequent miscarriages because their lining isn't building up properly, or who can't carry to term, are also candidates. And obviously, if a woman is lacking in your relationship because you're a same-sex male or you're a single male, you would also need a carrier, because right now we don't have any capabilities for men to be able to carry a baby. So you would need a carrier in that situation as well. So we have a lot of people who need gestational carriers. So this is a very popular treatment. And because we have a lot of people, and the United States is a very unique place because each state has a different law. So when we are doing an arrangement, a surrogacy arrangement, we do have to be cognizant of the different laws in each of the states. So that is one of the things, especially for international couples coming here from abroad, that they don't realize they can't just pick anybody in any state. Now, where the parent resides matters as well. So what are we looking at when we look at state laws? First, we have to look at where the parents reside. If the parents reside in a country in which surrogacy is not legal, we have to make sure that the arrangement is structured and the baby is brought back and the birth certificate is printed in such a way that the country that the parents are going to take that baby home to will recognize that baby as legitimate. So when we have couples, for instance, from France, we must consult with local counsel in France to make sure that the order putting the parents on the birth certificate complies with French law, because under French law, compensated surrogacy is not legal. And we want to make sure that although the arrangement would not be legal in their country, the baby is still recognized as a French citizen. And that can be a little bit more complicated. So a French couple needs to make sure that they inform their attorney of what needs to happen in France. And for that reason, we usually get local counsel. We also need to be aware of where the carrier lives. So for instance, in the United States, there is a patchwork of laws. So in New York State, for example, it is not legal to pay a carrier any compensation. And it is also not legal for a carrier's right to keep the baby to be terminated while the baby is in the carrier's womb. So there is nothing to do to terminate that woman's right to keep the baby until after birth. So if you are an intended parent coming from abroad, you do not want a carrier who resides in New York State because you can't pay her and she could keep the baby. So that would be a very bad state. So you want to make sure that your attorney or agency has good legal advice on what states to pick carriers. Some agencies would pick a carrier from New Jersey, but for instance, my agency would never allow a carrier to reside in New Jersey because in New Jersey, a carrier has 3 days after birth to assert her legal right to keep the child. And most people who are coming to the United States want the carrier's right to keep the child to be terminated prior to birth. So we don't take any carriers in states where there's a chance that the carrier could keep your genetic baby as long as the baby is not in any way genetically related to the carrier. So that is extremely important that we have a carrier in a state where the parents get the baby right away. So
can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
So kind of what you're saying is that different agencies are going to have different requirements for their surrogates, right? For their carriers. Yes. And you, I mean, and you could operate as an agency and offer and work with carriers in states that you wouldn't. So it's something that as an intended parent, you have to kind of be aware of that and kind of look out for that yourself.
Yeah. Do you want me to be a little bit clearer about that?
No, I think it's pretty clear, but it's also like, you know, like as an intended parent, you might think, oh, I'm going with an agency. They're going to know exactly how this works. And actually, you could be an agency and work with carriers in states where it's not the best situation.
Yes, you see, in the United States, agencies are not regulated. So nobody is looking them over. And this is a huge task to undertake. And people are very vulnerable when they come to the United States. And unfortunately, in the United States, there are a lot of agencies that are unscrupulous. So for instance, if you decided that you wanted to run an agency in the US, all you would need to do is form a corporation, and you can do that online for $100. And then you just put up a website and you could operate an agency in the United States. And not everyone who starts agencies has business sense, education, or experience. So if you are coming to use an agency in the United States, you want to check with fertility clinics because fertility clinics are regulated, and you want to make sure that they're an established, reputable agency. You want to get references from other clients, hopefully clients that are in your home country. So for instance, if you were coming to me and you were from London, and I would say to you, oh, I have these 5 clients in London, maybe you want to talk to them. And you can see how the process went. So what you really want to make sure you don't do is send your money blindly to one of these agencies.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really good tip.
And also because you're so vulnerable, sometimes you may do things that even if you're extremely bright, you wouldn't do under normal situations. The other thing to be aware of when you come to an agency in the United States is that any agency that tells you they have surrogates available immediately usually is not being completely honest, because the average wait time for a surrogate in our agency is 3 to 8 months, with really being closer to 4 to 6 months. And that is for a carrier who meets basic qualifications and comes from a good state. Now, it's true that almost all agencies will have carriers immediately available, but usually those are carriers that you wouldn't want for some reason. That's why they're immediately available. So they may be medically more risky, or they may be asking for excessive compensation. So if the average compensation is $25,000, they may be asking for $50,000 or $60,000. Or most clients are looking for a carrier that will abort if a baby has a defect, and maybe there are 5 or 6 carriers in the system that won't abort for any reason. So for instance, when somebody asks me if I have carriers available, I never say that we have carriers immediately available, even though we do, because usually those carriers are for very specific clients who have something unusual, like they won't abort a baby with Down syndrome, or they have so much money that the amount of money they pay the carrier is not something that they care about. So in general, you want to just make sure that if somebody tells you something that sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is. So we also
All right, thanks for that. Yeah, very thorough.
so you also want to make sure that where the carrier resides is important and where she delivers. So if she resides in a good state, she needs to deliver in that state. She can't go decide that she's going to go to Disneyland on vacation when she lives in Rhode Island during her 38 weeks of pregnancy. So we just want to make sure she doesn't have any travel plans and she doesn't plan on popping the border, because that's going to screw up the legal work. So that's important as well in one of these arrangements. You can't freely travel within the United States during your last trimester. As far as your special considerations being an international parent, there's a lot of things that you really want to take into account. So at first, I like to just go over costs. Costs for a lot of things in the United States are much more expensive than they are in other countries. And most of these are healthcare costs. So most people from Europe or Asia have a harder time appreciating the healthcare system in the United States because it is pretty dysfunctional compared to Europe. So for instance, health insurance is not free in the United States. Everybody has to pay for it. So you may get a woman who does not have adequate health insurance, and you will have to buy her health insurance because the health insurance she currently has doesn't cover maternity coverage because she wasn't planning on having a baby. So you will end up paying approximately $500 a month for 12 months for her health insurance. So once you buy that, then you think, okay, I just bought her health insurance, so her pregnancy should be covered in full. But since healthcare is not socialized, health insurance has what we call copays or deductibles or partial payments. So you will be paying part of that pregnancy as well. So normally you should budget between $6,000 and $10,000 for the pregnancy itself when buying health insurance. In addition, there is another unique problem, and I know that you may be watching this as a later date, but as of the publishing of this webinar, we have a new president that was just elected. And that new president is not too happy with the healthcare system in the United States. So all of this will be subject to change once Donald Trump takes office, and we're going to have to spend considerable amount of time analyzing the new insurance situation for intended parents. However, the most important thing for you to remember as an international intended parent is that a newborn may not be qualified for health insurance in the United States if you are not a U.S. resident. So if you have a baby in the United States, it can be extremely difficult to navigate the health insurance process for getting that newborn coverage, especially if that newborn is a week or two early. A stay in a neonatal intensive care unit for approximately a week in the United States for one baby is about $50,000 US. So you could end up having a baby in the NICU for 3 weeks and pay more than the cost of your entire arrangement. So you want to make sure you have a qualified agency who can navigate the newborn insurance world for you so that you are not stuck in a position where you have a humongous bill left in the United States and you can't pay it. So that is something that is extremely important for international intended parents to look into and to make sure that they take that into account. There are some ways around it, and it may depend on the unique situation of the parents. So for instance, if the intended parents live abroad, but they have a company that has a U.S. office, maybe they can be employed there or get health insurance through there, or maybe there is some way that they can establish residency here for a couple months, or that we can get the newborn insurance. So, but this is something that we have to look into in the beginning. And we want to make sure that all the intended parents, especially international ones, are aware of this. In addition, an international intended parent may, but does not have to, want to consider only having a singleton baby because there is unlikely to be a NICU stay for a single baby as opposed to twins. So that's an important aspect as well. again, right now, when you have a baby on U.S. soil, it is a U.S. citizen, which is very attractive, especially for our Asian clients who want a baby to be born on U.S. soil so that that baby can be educated in the United States and have all the benefits of being a U.S. citizen. So right now, it is still the case that any baby born on U.S. soil is a U.S. citizen. When that baby goes back to either its home country, we do have to look into passport issues and what needs to be done in that home country. For instance, in England, there is something called a parental order that even though we get a parental order in the United States, it is recommended to also get a parental order in England. And when we take that baby back, do we want to take that baby back to England on a US passport or on a British passport? And if you want to do a British passport, the baby has to stay here for 4 to 6 weeks, where if you do a US passport, you could go home in a week or two. So all of this has to do with how that child is going to be accepted in its home country. And that is something that is especially important to examine before the baby is born. Especially because with surrogacy abroad, the rules change all the time. Even if we examine it before your carrier gets pregnant, at around 5 months of pregnancy, we want to look at it again, make sure nothing has changed, and make sure that we're doing everything correctly so that you can get your baby home as soon as possible. We want to make sure the lawyer in the home country is contacted for the parentage order and also the process of immigration if there is one. Certain countries will have an immigration process. This is much more important for a same-sex male couple than it is for a straight couple. Because a straight couple might be able to go home and just say that they gave birth to the baby and nobody will care, or not say anything at all. However, if you have a male couple coming home with a baby with 2 men on a birth certificate, it is pretty clear that one of them didn't give birth to the baby. So we have to be extra careful that we're following all the rules of the home country. So basically, when you start an arrangement, you want to make sure that you, against the backdrop of all of this legal, you want to make sure that there are 2 very important legal processes that you want to start. So the first is going to be a contract between the parties. And what do I mean by a contract between the parties? So we want to have a contract in which the intended parents are both signatories to that contract, no matter who the biological parents are. So if you have a male couple, even if one isn't giving sperm, he's still going to be a party to the contract because he is a parent to that baby. And the carrier is obviously a party to the contract, but her husband or partner as well. So if she has a sexual male or female partner, that person should be a party to the contract because they have certain duties during the arrangement, and we want to make sure that they support their partner and that they understand what is going to be expected of them. In addition to a contract, we need a court order, and that is sometimes referred to as a parentage order or a birth order. And this is something normally that we go into court, in the local court where the carrier lives, at about 3 or 4 months of pregnancy, and that court is going to order the hospital and vital records where the carrier delivers to place both parents on the birth certificate. So this is very important for an international couple. They do not want to adopt their baby because that could be a very long process in the United States, and they could be even ineligible to do that in the United States. So they really need an order with their names on it to take that baby home to their home country. So that is something that is very important as well. In the contract, there are going to be various issues that you want to go over. Now, contracts are very long. We've been doing this for 18 years, so over time, provisions get added. But there are provisions that are very important, the most important being abortion and reduction. So in the United States right now, abortions are legal. They are legal usually up to about between 20 and 28 weeks, depending on the state. Normally, most abortions occur prior to that, especially in surrogacies, because they're usually for a birth defect that's picked up usually around 10 to 15 weeks. Reductions are usually done at around 10 weeks. However, there is no way to force a person in the United States to undergo an abortion. So we want to make sure that the parents and the carrier and her spouse are on the same page about what is going to happen if an abortion is requested and what are the reasons that the parents might ask for an abortion. So for instance, does a carrier want to carry 3 babies if 3 embryos are put in? Are we going to expect a reduction? And will she agree to that reduction, and where is it going to take place, and things like that have to go into the contract. In addition, not every state allows compensation. So you don't, if you're picking a stranger to carry your baby, she is obviously not going to do it for free. So we want only states where it's legal to compensate them. We put in issues about healthy diets, vitamins. Once that baby is born, we will have a parentage order to put the intended parents on the birth certificate. So legally, there would be no requirement for any contact after birth. But normally, we put in what you're thinking about. So, for instance, if you never want to talk to the carrier again, that's certainly acceptable, and many carriers would be okay with that. But we should let her know that you're probably not going to have any contact, that you live far away, or there's a language barrier, or that maybe you will send a picture once a year or things like that. We like to talk about that just so that the carrier knows what to expect and what your intentions are, and what she's willing to do in terms of contact after birth. We also put in things about confidentiality. So there are issues with carriers posting on Facebook, doing news articles in magazines, appearing on talk shows. Is that something that you're open to, or would you prefer that everything be private? So we like to make sure that that's also in the contract. Selection of the doctor. Are you going to choose the doctor? Does the carrier get to choose the doctor? Travel. Is the carrier allowed to travel during the pregnancy? Usually there is no travel outside the United States for the entire pregnancy, and the last trimester, usually no travel outside her state. So that is normally something we go over in the contract as well. We go over attendance at delivery. Do you as the parents want to be in the delivery room? Are you going to wait outside? Who's going to hold the baby first? Things like that. How are you going to find out about the delivery date? Are you going to come a week early? Is there going to be induction? We have communication in there as well, that the carrier normally is required to respond within 48 hours to any communications. And what kind of response are we looking for? Are we looking for an email, a Skype? Depending on where the parents live and where the carrier lives, there may be more electronic communication than phone. We also go over, in addition to compensation, what expenses you will be paying for. Are you paying for maternity clothes? Are you paying for babysitting? Are you paying for bed rest? Does the carrier work? Is there a lost wages issue? So all of those can add up to a lot of money. So we want to make sure that it is clearly delineated in the contract what expenses the parents are responsible for and what they're not. So these are just some of the issues. There'll be many more that you go over in the contract, but these are some of the big issues that you want to think about when you're first starting. So what are the common questions that people usually ask in the beginning? And most people are asking me, can the surrogate keep the baby? That's the biggest one. And in the state that we're going to do the contract, the surrogate will not be able to legally keep the baby. And we have not had to have any paid carriers in our agency ever try. However, there is nothing stopping a pregnant woman in the United States from getting on a plane and going to France and having the baby and keeping it. That has never happened, but theoretically, could that happen? Yes. Like, there's no way that we would know if she ran away. However, that would be extremely, extremely unusual, and I don't think it's something that really you should worry about. You will be the legal parent if you are in a legal state and you have proper legal counsel. But again, you want to make sure, especially if you're from abroad, that you're not penny wise and dollar foolish. You want to make sure that you have proper legal advice and that you know exactly what are the best dates to find a carrier, and what the parentage order, the whole purpose of that parentage order is to make you the legal parent. So you want to make sure that you can get a parentage order where your carrier is going to deliver. Now, the United States is much different than many other countries. So basically, you can almost have any treatment that you want in the US in any way. So for instance, you can freeze embryos here. You can choose the sex of your baby. You can test the embryos for diseases. You can test for certain genes. The more things that you do, the more expensive it becomes, but there are no prohibitions on things like sex selection. So a lot of people come to the United States to have a baby because they want a certain sex, and here you're allowed to choose the sex of the embryo that you put in, or because they want to screen out for certain diseases that maybe are common in their genes, and here you can screen out for certain diseases. Also, here you can have legal abortions. So if something is wrong with the baby. So that's another thing that is available in the United States. There are too many treatments to go over about what you can do in the United States versus others, but it is extensive. You can get an egg donor here, which many countries don't allow. The egg donor can be anonymous, but she can also be known. You can see pictures of the egg donor. You can meet the egg donor. You cannot meet the egg donor. You can request an egg donor who has an Ivy League education or a college education. You can request an egg donor of a certain race or religion. So there are a lot of advantages to coming to the U.S. because it is a capitalistic system. So basically, you can request anything. It may just be that if the demand is great, the price will go up. In international surrogacy, many foreign countries don't allow for the surrogacy or for compensation. So a lot of people are coming to the United States because of this, but also because there are fewer limitations and our success rate is very high. If you use an egg donor and good sperm, the success rate is about 80% per cycle. So it's a very high success rate here. And a lot of people come here because of the technology. That does make the technology much more expensive, though. And it is something that you want to look into to see how affordable your agency is for you and how much the entire cost will be for you. If you have any questions on this presentation, I'm happy to have you email my office for a package of information or to answer any questions you may have.
Excellent. And your contact details are up on the screen for everyone to see. I just want to say thank you very much, Melissa. That presentation has been super informative. As an international intended parent myself, these are so many of the questions that I had, and it's so good to hear some just direct, straightforward information about these things from someone who is so knowledgeable.
Oh,
so thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. And if you have any more questions, feel free to contact us.
Exactly. As Melissa said, the details are on the screen. So please contact. Alternatively, you can ask a question in our Facebook group, and Melissa will no doubt be available to answer that. We can forward that to her. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.